The film begins by showing a very crowded station. At that moment, we see a man named Jang, who has 3 children. Currently, he is on the train with his youngest son and eldest daughter, while his middle child is nowhere to be found. Once on the train, Jang sees several officers busy stopping a mysterious train. When the train stops, it turns out to be filled with decomposed bodies, and from it emerge millions of terrifying rats. Because he was too focused on the events outside, Jang didn't realize he was blocking the seat of a thug. Luckily, at that moment, he was saved by a bald man, who also happens to be a stronger thug than the one before. Jang then decides to move to another carriage. Meanwhile, on top of the carriage, it was already filled with rats. At that moment, Jang accidentally meets his middle child who had been missing since Jang and his wife separated. However, at that time, his child did not want to acknowledge him because she was going to marry an officer. As Jang was considered to be causing a disturbance, he was arrested and handcuffed. Meanwhile, on top of the carriage, the sound of rats was increasing. After knocking, the roof of the carriage broke open, and millions of rats immediately entered, biting and eating everything inside. Meanwhile, Jang, who was handcuffed earlier, tried to save himself. Fortunately, at that moment, he managed to get the key and remove his handcuffs. When he went back, he found the back carriage filled with bodies that had been bitten by rats. Remembering his children, he quickly went to save his children in the front carriage. Upon reaching the next carriage, Jang warned the people there that dangerous rats were in the back carriage ready to attack them all. However, because they didn't believe him, Jang moved to the next front carriage. Upon reaching the carriage where his children were, he asked them to go to the frontmost carriage to be safe, including the bald thug who had saved him earlier. After Jang left, someone who had been bitten by rats arrived, and behind him were many rats ready to attack them all. When they tried to save themselves, it was too late as the rats had already approached. People started to panic and tried to save themselves. Meanwhile, Jang, who was trying to enter the frontmost carriage, had difficulty because it was locked. It turned out that the people in the front did not want to open the door for fear that the rats would enter. There was even a man who suggested releasing the back carriages so the front could be saved. At that moment, the people in the back carriage were very panicked and crying. Meanwhile, his middle child, who had earlier denied him, now acknowledged Jang as her father and begged her fiancé to open the door. However, he did not pay attention to it. Since the carriage was locked, they had to climb over the train to move. One by one, they started doing so. Unfortunately, someone was late and got bitten by the rats. As the rear carriage was about to be detached, Jang's children and the bald man tried to jump to the frontmost carriage to save themselves. In those tense moments, they managed to save themselves. Amid the chaos, someone fainted, and after checking, it turned out that the person had been bitten by the rats. Seeing this, everyone was terrified that the virus from the rat bites would spread. They decided to isolate the bitten person, including Jang's youngest child. At that moment, Jang calmed everyone down because he had worked in the health bureau and knew the cure for rat bites. He then instructed the train to stop so he could get the medicine and treat everyone. However, a man there forbade him, saying that the whole city must be infected. And it turned out he knew from the beginning that the rats were attacking due to a failed experiment. After a long debate, it was decided to stop the train, and Jang, along with the thugs, would fetch the medicine, while the infected people were isolated in a different carriage. They stopped at a station for 2 hours. If Jang didn't return in that time, he would be left behind. Meanwhile, luggage was removed to avoid rats hiding inside, and they found bombs brought by soldiers, which they kept just in case. When they arrived in a city, it was already in chaos. Strangely, they didn't see any rats and discovered that the rats were gathering in dark places as they were afraid of sunlight. But the problem was that the sky was getting dark, and they decided to climb. Unfortunately, one of the thugs fell and became rat food. Meanwhile, a survivor from the city approached the train and said that the rats would become more vicious if the weather turned dark. Panic ensued, and they forced the train engineer to start the train because it was about to get cloudy outside. As it got dark, the rats spread out and became more aggressive. Another thug became a victim. Fortunately, they managed to reach a hospital. There, they met a family also infected by the rats. After knowing that Jang had the cure for the rat bites, they helped show him the way to a room. In the room, they saw many human bones, and it turned out to be a place where people infected by the rats were isolated a few months ago, but could not be saved. Meanwhile, the rats surrounded the train. Then, a desperate woman opened the door of the carriage where healthy people were, allowing the rats to attack and kill everyone inside. Zhang, who was going to get the medicine, encountered the swarm of rats again, but they didn't attack as they were mother rats nursing their young. After Zhang found and took the medicine, he fell, waking the mother rats. He threw the medicine, but it was taken by the earlier person, and they left while locking Zhang in the room. Luckily, Zhang and his friends managed to escape and chase the person to retrieve the medicine. When they found him, he had committed suicide because his wife and child couldn't be saved. They took the medicine and left, using a car. Although they were initially chased by the rats, the sunlight appeared again, allowing them to escape and bring the medicine to the station. Upon arrival, they were disheartened to see that the healthy people had become victims. But the good news was that they could still save the infected ones. Suddenly, someone tried to seize the medicine for himself, but the bald man tried to take it back. Despite his injured leg, he managed to throw the medicine to Zhang, who then boarded the moving train, while the bald man couldn't catch up and was devoured by the rats. Inside the train, the infected were being injected with the medicine, but panic rose again as the train was blocked by a jammed carriage. Zhang urged everyone to push the carriage, but they were too scared. He tried pushing it alone, aided by his children, who convinced others to help their father. Finally, people were motivated to help, while one of the thugs strapped a bomb to himself to slow down the rats. Due to their cooperation, they managed to clear the obstruction. However, the train needed someone to hold a lever to keep it moving. Zhang held the lever, and as the train moved, he tried to catch up but couldn't, and was eventually overrun by the rats. Meanwhile, the infected began to recover thanks to the injected medicine. The film ended with the train continuing its journey to an unknown destination. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.